A universal truth echoes throughout the realm of professional athletics. The most legendary competitors on Earth scarcely ever raise their voices to command a room. Whenever a master operates at the breathtaking pinnacle of their chosen field, whenever their mere footprint on the hardwood dictates an entire league's financial destiny and forces nations to rewrite their defensive playbooks, their method of communication undergoes a profound evolution. A true icon never has to sit behind a crowded press podium and violently strike a fist against the wood. A superstar never has to secretly funnel bitter, exasperated remarks to the hungry mainstream press. Instead, they broadcast on an entirely different, unfathomably potent frequency, relying exclusively on quiet, chillingly calculated maneuvers. They allow their undeniable on-court brilliance to deafen the critics, and every so often, they deploy a digital signal so crystalline that it sends a violent tremor through the established hierarchy. Anyone monitoring Caitlin Clark's online activity over the past 24 hours would instantly recognize this exact phenomenon unfolding in real time. The swirling controversy enveloping the American national squad has currently erupted into a full-blown inferno. The leadership on the sidelines had been executing a perilous, maddeningly stubborn strategy, while the star herself remained famously impenetrable. She never lowered herself to engage in trivial online skirmishes, nor did she ever publish mysterious, passive-aggressive text. She consistently let her majestic gameplay deliver the message, yet immediately after the American squad utterly annihilated the New Zealand roster, she stepped completely out of character. A credentialed photographer covering the global qualifying tournament had just uploaded an extensive digital gallery of snapshots. The massive collection showcased an array of athletes, shifting momentum swings, and brilliant highlights from the intense international competition. Tucked inside that vast album, however, hid one solitary, masterfully edited, and undeniably legendary portrait of the phenomenal guard. The frame flawlessly immortalized her intimidating aura, her sheer hardwood supremacy, and her cemented throne as the gravitational center of the hoops universe. Yet the phenom did far more than simply leave a casual like. She intentionally hunted it down, deliberately sifting through the sprawling gallery to locate her exact likeness, before broadcasting it directly to millions of devoted disciples. To the untrained eye, the gesture masqueraded as nothing more than a talented competitor reposting an aesthetically pleasing shot. Yet for those deeply versed in the brutal mental chess matches of elite athletics, the maneuver echoed as a deafening declaration of sovereign power. The upload served as a covert, flawlessly delivered warning to the seasoned veterans, the sideline generals, and the global basketball community, carrying a chillingly simple translation. She was loudly declaring that she knew exactly who she was and precisely the kind of devastation she was inflicting upon international defensive schemes. The implied vow stated that no matter how much they attempted to banish her to the perimeter or strip the rock from her grip, the undeniable engine could never be extinguished. The profound tragedy haunting the American coaching staff's current blueprint lay in their stubborn crusade against this inevitable reality rather than gracefully harnessing it. The leadership was actively perpetrating one of the most egregious, agonizing tactical atrocities in the long chronicles of global basketball, an astonishing display of malpractice that persisted even as the American squad triumphed by over 50 points. While the final stat sheet painted a picture of a magnificent individual performance, the raw game footage whispered a darker tale of systemic offensive suffocation. An observant digital analyst quickly chimed into the discourse, eagerly welcoming audiences to a dedicated breakdown of the developing saga. The commentator swiftly provided a passionate, immediate analysis of the newly finished contest, noting how the American powerhouse managed to double the offensive output of their opponents, securing a jaw-dropping victory of 101-something. With a final official tally of 101-46, the matchup concluded as nothing short of a biblical slaughter. As the passionate observer highlighted, the sensational rookie had finally earned her inaugural starting nod of the tournament, prompting widespread digital euphoria. Throngs of loyal supporters rejoiced wildly, completely convinced that the stubborn sideline generals had finally awakened to absolute reason. Hearing one's name announced during introductions meant absolutely nothing, however, if the ensuing assignment was maliciously engineered to neutralize a generational talent's greatest weapons. Throughout the span of the opening 3 periods, the orchestrators on the bench committed to a philosophy that violently shattered all modern tactical logic. They trotted out the young phenom for the opening tip, yet stubbornly paired her alongside the seasoned veteran floor general. Rather than tossing the offensive ignition keys to arguably the most lethal transition playmaker the sport had ever witnessed, The Strategic Command inexplicably anointed the aging veteran as the primary orchestrator of the basketball. They took a singular force of nature, an athlete whose entire hardwood identity revolved around gripping the leather and warping the literal geometry of the floor, and reduced her to a mere perimeter distraction. The brutal evaluation revealed that while the young star performed adequately through the first 3 quarters, she was imprisoned in an almost strictly off-ball capacity. Even after finally earning the long-awaited starting nod, the presence of the veteran guard dominating the primary facilitator role forced the electric rookie into constant, unnatural deference whenever the rock needed to be advanced. This maddening, restrictive pattern persisted unrelentingly throughout the opening stages of the contest. A careful ear to this tactical deconstruction exposes the very fatal flaw rotting at the core of the national team's offensive architecture. The Phenom navigated the opening 3 periods capably, despite being chained to an off-ball existence immediately upon securing her starting promotion. With the veteran firmly entrenched as the offensive initiator, the generational rookie remained trapped in a subservient role, completely barred from steering the attack. Observers simply had to stop and examine the utter madness behind such a baffling game plan. Forcing a talent like Caitlin Clark to operate strictly without the rock was akin to purchasing a screaming red Ferrari and refusing to take it out of first gear on a quiet residential street. One might as well stick Patrick Mahomes out wide as a decoy just so an aging journeyman could desperately try to sling the pigskin instead. Such a move displayed a tragic total blindness to the rare, once-in-a-lifetime brilliance this particular phenom brought to the hardwood. Pundits accurately drew a line back to the legends of the past to illustrate the folly of this approach. No sane tactician would ever look at a prime Magic Johnson and command him to hide in the baseline shadows, begging for a spot-up jumper. That icon never built his legacy on waiting for the catch. His true superpower lay in an otherworldly, god-tier ability to read the entire floor. His true worth stemmed from calculating the chaos of the game at lightning speed, predicting the enemy's shifts long before they moved, and threading needles that ordinary mortals could not even imagine. Caitlin Clark was armed with that identical, hyper-intelligent mastery of playmaking. Ripping the leather from her grasp and chaining her to the wing, or making her sprint through endless screens like a standard perimeter shooter, meant the coaching staff was actively sabotaging their own nuclear option. They were effectively slashing her lethal impact right down the middle. What happened next under this bizarre system shocked absolutely nobody. After 3 punishing periods of heavy rotation, the superstar sat with a mere 7 points and 3 solitary dimes to her name. For an average hooper, those numbers might have looked perfectly acceptable, but for the most explosive scoring catalyst breathing today, it was nothing short of a statistical disaster. She had been reduced to a passenger, fading completely into the background noise. The squad moved the ball adequately, but fear was entirely absent from the opposition. Sure, teammates like Ryan Howard were knocking down triples and Kelsey Plum put together a solid shift. Yet the relentless, breathtaking storm of tempo that traditionally defined her time in command was completely gone. The United States was merely surviving off raw individual ability rather than any sort of cohesive master plan. Then came the final period, where either through a sudden stroke of genius or blind panic, the men in suits on the sideline finally flipped the script. The maestro was sent back onto the hardwood with exactly 7 minutes remaining on the clock. Only this time, she wasn't sharing the backcourt with an older floor general. There was absolutely no one left to overshadow her. The coaching staff at last surrendered total control of the scoring machine to her capable hands for that concluding quarter. Taking the floor precisely at the 7-minute mark of the 4th period, Caitlin fully embraced her destiny as the primary orchestrator. Anyone watching that specific span of action witnessed history unfold because the very second she grabbed the reins, the climate of the arena shifted entirely, morphing the contest into a ferocious, unstoppable force. Sluggish, agonizingly slow offensive possessions disappeared like smoke, replaced instantly by an adrenaline-fueled blitz. The New Zealand defense, who had stubbornly held their ground for 3 periods through gritty bruising, were violently thrown into a lightning-fast sprint they had zero chance of surviving. With the rock resting in her palms above the arc, she possessed a deadly intent far beyond simply looking for a bucket. She dissected the hardwood with a terrifying mental velocity that sent chills down the spines of rival tacticians. A single defender drifting a millimeter off balance caught her eye immediately. She plotted her teammates' paths to the paint a full 2 seconds before a play even materialized. How often did this reality need to be violently hammered home? Forcing a phenom of her caliber away from the action for extended stretches was nothing short of tactical suicide. While one might concede that a handful of stray plays might require her to act as a decoy, yet constantly pushing the tempo up the hardwood while deliberately keeping the leather completely away from her grasp, essentially neutralized her lethal intellect, rendering her godlike orchestrating abilities entirely useless from the shadows. That single catastrophic flaw remained the heart of the entire debacle. During that final frame, spectators were treated to the brutal, beautiful carnage unleashed when a true conductor is finally permitted to direct the symphony. She systematically tore the opposing squad's rim protection to absolute shreds without launching a single jumper. Sensing the absolute terror in their eyes regarding her lethal range, she ruthlessly executed them deep inside the key. Lethal, laser-guided deliveries flew from her fingertips, slicing through microscopic gaps in the opposition's armor. Time after time, she gifted Kiki Iriafen with completely uncontested bunnies right at the glass. Dropping absolute dimes near the hoop to Monique Billings, she handed her running mates the simplest, softest finishes they would ever encounter on a global stage. The sheer numbers generated during that lone stretch of pure playmaking glory left the world utterly breathless. Within mere moments, the playmakers' assist count surged, instantly multiplying from a modest 3 to an impressive 6. A sudden offensive eruption transformed her subdued 7-point tally into a striking 14-point finish, securing her spot as the squad's secondary scoring juggernaut. 7 minutes of commanding the offense accomplished far more than 25 minutes of being exiled from the primary action ever could, a reality that the game footage broadcasts loud and clear. The statistical data aggressively echoes this undeniable reality, while Caitlin Clark's own digital footprint quietly hints at the exact same conclusion. The presence of other athletes on the hardwood becomes entirely irrelevant, regardless of whether titans like Chelsea Gray, Paige Buchers, or Kelsey Plum are sharing the space. While those individuals stand as extraordinary, historically elite talents within the sport, none of them boast that distinct, innate, almost supernatural perception of the game that Clark brings to the table. Nobody else warps the spatial dynamics of the arena quite like she does, yet her unparalleled court mapping remains dormant unless she is actively directing the offense. Whenever relegated to a secondary role, the lone avenue for her to touch the rock is when teammates feed it her way strictly for shooting purposes. Consequently, her profound impact is slashed by more than 50% during every single, the moment that her elite orchestration relies entirely upon being gifted control of the rock. When stripped of the primary facilitation duties, she is tragically reduced to a mere recipient waiting for an isolated scoring opportunity. Enforcing such a suffocating framework systematically annihilates the majority of her world-class potential on the floor. A chilling wake-up call looms over the national team's leadership, one they must confront before the genuine global gauntlet commences. Securing a championship podium finish is impossible when a roster's ultimate weapon is intentionally neutralized merely to preserve the egos of seasoned veterans. International competitors have evolved to a dangerously elite tier. Powerhouses representing Spain, Australia, and France operate as meticulously organized, strategically flawless machines. Attempting a disjointed dual facilitator approach against such rivals instantly reveals a fatal lack of rhythm, inevitably trapping the offense in desperate, expiring clock nightmares. Control must be surrendered to the singular talent capable of conjuring scoring opportunities from absolute nothingness. The offense belongs in the grip of the athlete whose mere presence at midcourt dictates immediate panic and defensive swarms. Possession must flow through the visionary, who can thread a 50-foot dart directly into a sprinting teammate's hands, a fact Clark herself understands perfectly. Her peers recognize it too, and following that blistering final period scoring surge against New Zealand, the leadership appears to be agonizingly awakening to this undeniable truth. The current spectacle stands as the most intensely scrutinized developmental struggle ever recorded in the women's game. A once-in-a-lifetime prodigy is visibly shattering the archaic frameworks desperately attempting to box her in. The fast-approaching professional campaign promises pure devastation as the sidelined superstar quietly stockpiles an ocean of raw motivation. She observes silently while the entrenched hierarchy actively maneuvers to suppress her revolutionary influence. The sheer agony of being forced into an unnatural role continues to test her patience on the global stage. Once she triumphantly marches back to her home organization and reclaims absolute dominion over the playbook without the interference of locker room politics, a historic wave of athletic retribution will strike a completely defenseless league. An era of ruthless payback is dawning, heralded by clear signals broadcasted through both cyber channels and strategic gameplay. Debates regarding her status as the premier floor general on the planet have been permanently silenced. The sole remaining mystery is exactly how many more fixtures the national brass will squander in their stubborn illusion of denial. Gratitude is extended to the viewers who entered the film room today to uncover the raw reality unfolding behind closed doors and across the painted floor. Fabricated mainstream storylines find no sanctuary within this realm of observation. Superficial sensationalism is banished here, leaving only a relentless dedication to unearthing the strategic truths buried deep within the footage. For those exhausted by the journalistic shields protecting managerial incompetence and who crave the most unforgiving, transparent breakdowns available online, a demand is made to obliterate the subscribe mechanism, hit the like icon, and sound off in the discussion thread. Will the national leadership ultimately capitulate and permanently crown her the offensive director before facing the Spanish Armada? Or does a stubborn refusal to adapt mean her monumental worth will remain tragically crippled on the perimeter? The saga will continue when the next frame of tape is meticulously dissected.